Well, great. It is 2 o'clock Eastern, and we are going to get started. So, welcome everybody. We would like to extend a warm welcome to everybody that's given us their time and is attending. We've got quite a list of attendees, so we're excited to kind of share our insights. So, as a quick introduction, my name is Mike McDonald, Executive Vice President of Business Development and Marketing at Sync Show. And the we're excited to share with you kind of our insights as we look at 2020 and everything that builds into customer experience, user experience, and really what those trends are from a marketing and from a sales perspective. So it's certainly that time of year. We're approaching mid-November and everybody's in planning mode from a strategy standpoint and a budget standpoint for 2020. So our goal is to share with you just insights that we've gleaned and some kind of thought-provoking things as far as we've boiled down really what we feel are the top 3 trends influencing customer experience for 2020. So when you think about it from a customer standpoint, the walls have really come down relative to their expectations between marketing and sales and customer experience. So what we want to do is just share some insights with you to make sure that we're all kind of positioned to address those expectations of our customers. And hopefully by the end of this, and we'll spend probably the next 30 minutes together, that you gain some insights to help craft your marketing strategies going forward. So just quick introductions here. Again, my name is Mike McDonald. I'll be the moderator today. And then joining me is Greg Lukács. And Greg is the content strategy manager at Sync Show. Greg provides editorial oversight, content strategy, and creative direction for all website projects and inbound marketing campaigns. So,
Great.
in short, Greg is our content guru.
Welcome, everyone. I'm excited about this.
Yep. And then Jazz Joseph. We're excited to have Jazz with us as well. Jazz is an account manager at Sync Show, and Jazz works with the lead account managers and strategists to ensure flawless strategic work is being executed on behalf of our clients.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here.
Great. And Greg and Jazz recently attended, you guys recently attended the HubSpot Inbound Conference. So some of what you'll be sharing, I think, was gleaned from there as well. So exciting stuff.
Yep, that's right.
Well, good. Just some housekeeping notes before we get started here. Typical housekeeping items. You are going to receive, all attendees will receive via email this slide deck along with a summary of kind of the content that we're presenting. And that'll be within the next few days following the webinar. You'll also receive a recording of the webinar. And then we're going to be asking polling questions throughout. I think we've got 3 polling questions. I think the next 2 slides are the first 2, just to get a sense and share with everybody a sense of who's on the call, what the responsibilities are, just so we can kind of share that information. And then lastly, as questions come up, and we'll address them at the end, just please enter those in the box off to the right. So next slide, which is the first polling question. So first polling question is, what is your business function? So really, we're trying to get a sense here. Are you in marketing? Are you in sales, CEO or business owner, or other? And this will help us just kind of share who's sitting on the webinar with everybody and give you a sense of insights. So just take the next few seconds and pick your function, and we'll share that with you. Great. So just over half are in the marketing space, which is great. 23% sales, so very, very focused towards sales and marketing, and then with some business leaders and some other as well. So some nice diversity rounding it out there. So great. Thank you for that. The next polling question is, indicate to what extent your company prioritizes customer experience. High priority, mid-level priority, lower level priority. This will help us as we kind of craft some of what we discuss. And the results. High priority. That's fantastic. Mid-level priority, good. So we're not talking with anybody that doesn't value it, which is probably why they're not on the call. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And then really, I'm going to hand off Jazz to you now. That being said, we know kind of the mix of who's on the call and kind of to what level of importance customer experiences. So with that, Jazz, I will hand off to you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I wanted to kick us off by talking about one of the biggest trends that we heard at the Inbound conference and just overall that we've been hearing in our research and working with our clients, and that is building trust. So, moving into 2019, trust really is more important than ever. Our team is constantly reading, constantly learning, and we're seeing headlines all the time in industry publications around trust. And a lot of this has to do with users being worried about their data. There's all of this content right now in the news, both marketing related and otherwise, about people's data and what's happening with it and what happens when you give your data to a company. And more than ever, people are worried about it. Every time somebody fills out a form, they're thinking, what are you going to do with my email address? What are you going to do with my information? And because of that, we really have to tailor our marketing to this trust building. We have to build trust with not only our customers, but also our prospects and really anyone that visits our website. So today I wanted to give everybody some tactical takeaways around building trust from a digital perspective. At Sync Show, we are focused on digital marketing. So I wanted to share how we're helping both ourselves and our clients every day build trust digitally. So one of the first ways to do that is via offsite SEO. So for those of you who aren't familiar with offsite SEO, offsite SEO has to do with other relevant websites linking to your website. So I gave an example here of a data box blog that I was recently featured in. And you'll see I got a little quote in the blog, but more importantly, there's a link to SyncShow's website. Now, this is really going to help us from an SEO perspective, search engine optimization, because it's going to help boost our website in the search rankings. It's going to show Google that this really well-known marketing blog, Databox's blog, is linking to SyncShow. So wow, SyncShow must also be really well-known and reputable in the marketing world. So it's really great from a back-end SEO perspective, but from a trust building perspective, which is what I'm talking about today, it's also really great for just user experience. Any marketers that are reading this blog are going to see SyncShow's name and they're going to be able to click through and visit our website and realize that what we're saying is bigger than just what's on our website. Other industry publications are also sharing it. So that's a really great way to build trust and also get your brand name out there. So this next slide goes into how trustworthy your website is. So your website really is the front door of your business. If somebody doesn't know who you are, if for instance they're coming to your website from a blog that you were featured in, like that example I just shared, what is that first look that they get at your website? And here, we have some really extreme examples of websites that are outdated or broken. So you want to make sure that your website is secure, especially if you're asking for people's personal information. If you're asking for email addresses, if you have forms on your site, even more so if you're asking for credit card or payment information, we always want to make sure that our website's very secure. But if you take it a step further, it's not just the technical security of it, it's also the look and feel of it. Does this look like a reputable business? Does this look like somebody who's cutting edge that I would want to work with? That's really going to be important to all of your website visitors. So, assuming that you do have a well designed website and you're providing a great front door to both prospects and customers when they visit your website, there are some ways to take it a step further, and that's by using these trust symbols. So, I pulled these examples from SyncShow's website. So, you'll see that top row are some of the certifications and awards that we've won, and we proudly showcase those on our website, not only to showcase our expertise and things like that, but also to build trust so that if somebody has never heard of SyncShow before, they're just visiting our website, we can say things like, hey, like, you don't have to hear it from us, hear it from other reputable partners. If they're familiar with HubSpot, if they're familiar with Inc. 5000, if they're familiar with the Google Partner Program, they're going to see that we're a part of these organizations. And that's going to further build trust and give them peace of mind that they are able to submit on our forms, give us their information. And then to take it even a step further, testimonials are absolutely incredible. The more testimonials that you can get on your website, the better. It's really going to help with building trust. So, this last slide that I wanted to share here is a real life example of a company that is doing a tremendous job at building trust, and they're actually turning their customers into evangelists. So, I pulled this example from my Facebook feed. So Chewy.com, if you're not familiar with it, is a company and they're what we like to call an experience disruptor. So Chewy.com sells dog products, but they sell them in a way that's really disrupting the normal dog product buying experience. Instead of going to a store, you can just order right off their website and everything is delivered to you. But they take it a step further and they really build trust with their consumers in a tremendous way. So this man shares a story about, and he shared this on Facebook about a dog, about his dog who passed away, and he emailed Chewy.com and told them that he had a brand new unopened bag of food and he wanted to return it. Instead of just accepting his return, what a normal company would do, they told him to donate it to a local shelter. They returned his money, and even better, they sent him this personalized painting of his dog and a sympathy card directly from the company. He loved it so much that he posted it on his Facebook page, said amazing things about Chewy.com, and again, they really are turning their customers into evangelists. Which is just taking this building trust so much further than what a lot of other companies in their space are doing. So they're an incredible example, and it's definitely something that you can emulate across the board with your customers and your business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and just to add on to that, Jazz, at Inbound we heard a lot about the new type of disruptor being an experience disruptor. So Chewy.com is one of those examples. So also, Carvana. These are companies that are not offering new services, but they're offering new ways to treat their customers, and that's what's helping them disrupt.
what I love about
Exactly.
this too, just to interject, what I love about this, Jazz, is I'm a dog lover, so like this tugs at my heartstrings. But this really, so Chewy's a B2C organization, and probably everybody on this call, and certainly we are a B2B organization. But what this really does is, this is how from everyone on this call and us experience being treated by a partner or a vendor or a supplier or somebody that we've done business with, and it really transcends whether it's B2B or B2C, your expectations, because you can't really flip off that switch. So once the bar is set really high, then it's hard to kind of lower it again. So everybody on the call, and we do this at Sync Show too, like think about how we could take this type of an approach and apply it to how it's appropriate for our business.
Absolutely. That's a great point. People want to do business with people. Even in the B2B space, you have to have that human element. It's a
Yep.
really great point.
Yep.
Great. So this takes us, it's a nice segue into the second biggest trend that we heard about at Inbound. It's storytelling. So I know you're all thinking, storytelling's been around for 35,000 years, actually over that. How is this a new trend? Well, it's not a new trend, but what is new is that marketers are talking about it a lot now. And so at Inbound, I attended no less than 3 sessions about storytelling, and it's just reiterated by multiple people how important storytelling is. So essentially, what storytelling does is it's an impactful way to create positive customer experiences, which I'm going to talk through. So on this slide, it's, the question is why story right now? But it's first worth sort of stepping back to consider only the first part of the question on the slide, and that's why story? Like, so why story at all? I saw a speaker at Inbound who is really compelling. Her name is Gabriela Pereira. She's the founder of DIY MFA. So it's a company that offers a do-it-yourself alternative to receiving a master's degree in writing. And so I like her perspective because she's both a marketer and an author. And she's a marketer with sort of an analytical mind that wants to get into the data. So she said that story and marketing go together for a number of reasons. One, the transactional nature or experience that happens with storytelling, it demands a back and forth. So it's a natural give and take. Stories also deepen established relationships. They also bridge the gap between people. They help people of differing worldviews, you know, really understand each other in ways that other, tactics can't. And importantly, there's also a biological response in your brain when it hears stories. So there's, essentially a biological response to engagement that's proven by research. And Gabrielle mentioned a study from Yuri Hassan from Princeton Neuroscience Institute that linked story creation and comprehension to similar brain processes, which I thought was really compelling. So if we could go back one slide, that answers the first part of that question. I guess it's, obviously worth considering the whole question, why story right now? Or, why is there this focus on this concept that's been around for literally tens of thousands of years? And honestly, it's kind of a mystery. So I interviewed Gabriella for my latest blog, and I led my interview with this question, this exact question. And Gabrielle also had no insight and was surprised that marketers hadn't started talking about storytelling well before now. So, I felt really validated by that. It was pretty great. But although she did talk about some breadcrumbs that lead to some strong we can make some strong inferences from. So according to Gabriella, again, there's a lot of research that's happening right now in psychology and neuroscience that's discovering the impact story has in our brains and how they function, and also how story creates empathy. And that would then again tie to this need to create human experiences, because people want to engage with people and people want to engage with people who are empathetic. Another breadcrumb is Donald Miller. So if you don't know Donald Miller, you should. He authored the book Building a Story Brand a couple years ago, and that book essentially lays out a framework for how to build a really simple script that tells your brand story in a compelling way that, so it really resonates with your ideal personas. So the release of this book, which I recommend everyone read if you haven't, got a lot of people and marketers talking about storytelling. Next slide. So this takes us to the next logical question. So, how can we use story in marketing? And in the context of marketing, we really can use storytelling to build out buyers' journeys that customers and prospects actually want to go on. And, you can use storytelling to entice prospects, convert them to customers, and then get those customers to become those brand evangelists that Jazz was talking about. And there are really multiple frameworks that people are now using to sort of organize information and create content plans that incorporate story. And it's important to note that really foundationally at SyncShow, all of our content plans begin with the creation of buyer personas. We do this through in-person strategy sessions, questionnaires, deep dive research, but we spend the time and effort creating accurate buyer personas because they drive all the content that we create, because we're essentially laying out who our ideal customers are, their goals, their objectives, their pain points, and the objections that they may have. And so, knowing all of this helps us find the right people with the right messages at the right time. And, that's key in content marketing. And so I'm just going to briefly walk through 4 of the frameworks that people are using today. So back to Donald Miller. So the first framework is the story script. Donald Miller pioneered this framework, so it's really only a couple years old. But what it does is it helps you, or the intent of it is to help you keep your brand messaging on point. And the idea is to create a really simple script that'll keep your prospects and customers engaged with your message, reduce any friction or any complication along the way, because that's a big thing also that we heard at Inbound is people don't want complication. They want ease. And lack of clarity is certainly a major point of friction. So basically, you're using this framework to clearly communicate what your company does and why prospects should listen. When you have the script in place, you'll have the primary themes and messages in place you need to get out in the world. So it starts with your ideal customer, and this is your buyer persona or buyer personas. And the key in this framework is thinking of your ideal customer as the hero of your story. And this is something that many brands get wrong. So it means you need to spend most of your time speaking to the wants and needs of your customer and really framing the messaging to be about them. It's not about you. Only on select pages of your website should you be the primary focus, and that would be on career portals or on about sections. Those are pages people are navigating to because they want to hear about you, but otherwise they want to know about what you're going to do for them, or else they'll tune out. So it's also just a good rule of thumb to make primary messages prospects interface with to be really benefit focused. So saving time, reducing downtime, etc., and then showing them how you can make them do that. So once you have that hero in place, your ideal customer, you're going to identify what these individuals need help with, and you need to speak and show that you're going to help them overcome hurdles. And then your customer finds a solution provider. Shock, that's you. And it's really important for your company to really establish itself as a guide. And the story script sort of methodology in the story brand book say that really guides need to have both empathy, and they need, so that's literally incorporating phrases like "we understand" in your copy. And then authority. And Jazz spoke about authority earlier, but those are the certifications, the companies that you're associated with, and it's also testimonials. That's really gonna help them view you as a guide. And then, of course, your customers need to know how you can help them succeed. You need to lay out what they need to do to engage with you, and that's a big thing. People, again, don't want friction or confusion. They want ordinal steps to say, maybe first they need to reach out to have an intro call. Maybe then they're going to receive a roadmap, and maybe then there's the sign off. People like knowing the process. And then inspire them to take action. So this is the point at which they're compelled to engage with you because your story was captivating. So that's that framework. The next one's really interesting. So I learned about this one at Inbound. Again, this is the framework that Gabriela Pereira talked about and that I interviewed her about for my last blog. Gabriela created this after doing a lot of research, and she just started noting that there were a ton of parallels between a traditional story structure and a buyer's journey. So sort of unlike the story script framework, which is one simple script that you would then build content pieces around to craft buyer's journeys, this framework can be applied to create very specific buyer's journeys. And sort of just for the ease of explanation here, the easiest one to map out is taking a prospect who doesn't know who you are, but taking them through that first sale. So just to really quickly go through this, in Act 1, you're really just introducing a problem and making a prospect aware that there's an issue. So if you have your buyer personas in place, again, you'll understand the main points and challenges your prospects are running across, and you're going to need to speak to them in copy. And then you get to this decision 1. And so in literature, this is called the inciting incident. So this is the thing that happens that puts everything else into motion. So, for example, in Wizard of Oz, this is the tornado hitting. In a buyer's journey, this is where something internal or external is compelling the prospect to take action and to seek out your solution and learn more about it. So then Act 2 is essentially you providing more educational content to nurture that person. along their journey or throughout their story, or through their story rather, with more enticing information. So you're going to be clearly laying out a solution to their problem. And then, every traditional story has that middle point when the character is going through this self-doubt. They're having that mirror moment where they're looking into the mirror and self-doubting. So in the buyer's journey, this is really people questioning, is this really for me? This is where you need to provide that extra bit of validation so that you're saying absolutely our solutions for them. And honestly, testimonials on landing pages are great for this. And then you get to the second decision at the end of Act 2, and this is when a character in a story really hits rock bottom. Things can't get any worse. And so in the buyer's journey, this is the decision point. This is when you need to clearly present how your solution will solve their problem, and then, of course, the steps they need to take to get there. And you can see some parallels to StoryScript here. It's, again, laying out that process plan. And then, of course, the beginning of Act 3 is the climax of the story. So this is the big battle in a movie. In the buyer's journey, this is literally the customer taking out their credit card and making the purchase. And so that is ultimately what you want them to do. But then there's a really important part of the story, the second and third parts of Act 3, which in literature is called the denouement. So this is really the upsell, cross-sell, or post-conversion nurturing that will really start them on another story or journey that leads to yet another purchase or type of engagement. And that takes us to the third framework. So you notice some parallels between framework 1 and framework 2. This is all these are frameworks to be used for creative ideation. So they do run parallel with one another, and this third one, you'll also see some more parallels. And so the flywheel framework is something that HubSpot revealed in Inbound 2018, and then they built upon it again in Inbound 2019. And it's essentially a different way of looking at what once was referred to as a buyer's funnel. And the funnel was essentially the attract and engage stages of the buyer's journey. So you're attracting your customers, and then you're educating them, and then you're pushing them to a handoff to sales and that conversion. So what the flywheel does is it really forces you to create buyer's journeys that consider what happens post-conversion. So it makes you question what you're going to do to continue nurturing prospects and customers, to go through the flywheel again so that they engage with you further. What does this story look like? Remember, again, it starts with buyer personas. In the attract stage, you're really going to create the content that entices individuals to research solutions. For example, you could create campaigns that address common pain points. You could have attract tactics would be social posts that drive to on-site videos, and content and blogs that expand upon those ideas that were sort of teased out in social. You then get to the engage stage. So at this point, you're really providing content that helps prospects clearly identify that you have a solution for them. And then they are, and that push them toward further engagement. So perfect engage tactics would be, pop-up CTAs, landing pages, chatbots, CTAs that drive people to sign up for your newsletter, and landing pages to download, all types of offers, ebooks, white papers. And then the delight stage, so this is after engagement of some sort. You're encouraging individuals who've engaged with you to interact further, to find potential solutions to other problems. So the goal here too is to create those promoters or evangelists that Jazz was talking about out of your customers. And I really like email drip campaigns and newsletters for delight tactics. They really continue to nurture customers with other opportunities and provide value to customers so that they want to remain engaged with you and potentially to start the cycle over again. And that leads us to the final framework. And this is one where things kind of blow up. So this was interesting. So this one is new to me, and it's much, much more complicated. I learned about the playground at Inbound this year. So the speaker, Ashley Faust, who is Senior Manager of Integrated Strategy at the software giant Atlassian, she it was interesting because she dissed the funnel at Inbound without calling it out directly, which I thought was kind of a big deal. So her argument is that using sort of like a linear framework or funnel, or as she called the flywheel, the looping decision journey, she says they're not complicated enough. because she used the playground analogy because, like playgrounds, users or buyers in this case don't take linear paths. So you see on the image there the paths that they have carved out. People are going to be running through those bushes. They're not going to stay on the journeys that you want them to. And even when you have things for people to interact with, so various forms on website pages or offers or videos, people are going to consume them in the wrong order. So that's just like how there's the 3-year-old that's going to climb up a slide. It's the same type of thing. So really, to create stories using this framework, you're going to have to approach it a little bit differently, but it would start with a buyer persona. But you really focus on creating a narrative framework where you create content around 3 to 5 concepts that you really want to drive home across many distribution channels. And so there's not much linear thinking here. It's kind of a blanket approach. Not all channels need to accomplish all things, but you're still hitting on these 3 to 5 concepts in many formats on many channels, and then allowing prospects to create more or less their own stories. It's more of a choose your own adventure. And then slide 20, or next slide. Okay, so now your personas are in place. You've built out they're your ideal buyers. Your storytelling framework's been selected, and basically you've decided how you want to organize the content that you've created or want to create in a way that provides the best user experience for your prospects. And then you've built out a content plan that you've mapped onto your framework, and now you need to start creating that actual content that provides your customers the best experiences. And so on the next slide, there are just some things to keep in mind here, and much of this was lifted from what we learned at Inbound in terms of recurring themes. So I'm just going to go over these really quickly. You need to integrate compassion and emotion. To Jazz's point, people want to attend or rather engage with humans. That was really driven home at Inbound. I actually attended a session called Compassionate Commerce. People want to know that there's a human on the other end of things. And as I noted before with a story script, you can do this by showing empathy. You can write also casually and yet professionally, and create videos that speak to people's worries, needs, and aspirations. Also remove friction. Essentially, people don't want to work too hard for anything. If they don't understand something or how it's going to provide value, they're going to move on. And then breaking your story into small manageable pieces. I also attended a session at Inbound about this, and it also aligns sort of with that playground framework that I just discussed. But people want to engage with you how they want to engage. And they want simple stories, and they don't want to, they don't want to work too hard to understand. And then of course, give buyers options. And so while your story should be simple to understand and without friction, people like choosing their own adventures in a way. So at Inbound, I learned that by giving people more options in emails, HubSpot actually increased their click-through rate by over 1,200%. And that's just one example. So then talk to buyers right now. So the number one source of friction in the buying experience is time. Which is why people love chatbots and live chat. So HubSpot actually found that site visitors prefer chatbot over reaching out to talk to a human. Now, people do want to engage with the human, but also they want quick answers. So they're sort of conflicted. And then, essentially HubSpot found that site engagement after the implementation of their chatbot increased 72%. So that was pretty impactful. And this next one's pretty important. So a lot of times we put a lot of effort into creating content for prospects to win them over as customers. But basically, we need to stop putting all of our resources into acquiring new customers. We really need to think about the flywheel, really creating these tactics that create evangelists. And if you're thinking about also the 3-act or this end of Act 3 in the story structure I talked about, this is also starting them on that new story. And then 7th point here, empower customers to do it themselves. So customers like learning from customers. HubSpot actually said that 75% of the questions posed on their website in 2018 came from customers seeking help from other customers. And if you don't have the budget or time to launch and moderate a forum, which many people don't, it's understandable. You could start by building out expansive FAQ pages or resource centers, so customers, the customers that want to get right to the point can. And then finally, experience what your buyers experience. I found this really interesting. So HubSpot actually recommended, pulling out your own credit card and actually buying your product or service to see what it's like. Focus on, the communications you're receiving and the disconnects that you're having through the buying experience overall. And you just need to keep in mind, or keep the questions in mind: is it natural or does it make sense? So those are 8 tips. With that, I will hand it over to Mike.
Yeah, those are great, Greg. Thank you. Super interesting stuff, definitely. And if you think about kind of what Jazz talked about with building trust, and then what you just kind of walked us through with story and why story now and what it means to people, it's a really good segue into what we believe and what we've found is really that third trend for 2020, which is the alignment between marketing and sales. I'd call it the ever-evolving alignment between marketing and sales. And it's not just going to be in 2020. This is continuing into each year, obviously. But so we'll talk a little bit about that right now. So next slide, please. So just by the numbers a little bit, we're gonna look at a few stats just for a little bit of context here. So next slide. Companies with tightly aligned marketing and sales departments enjoy a 36% higher customer retention rate. So if you think about how hard it is to get a new customer, it's really important to keep those customers, and it makes growth easier. So very interesting stat here. Next slide. Companies with tightly aligned marketing and sales departments enjoy a 38% higher sales win rate, which is extremely important. And then lastly, and this is, and yet a recent survey revealed that when asked, 65% of salespeople said they can't find content to send to prospects. The good news is there's a lot of room for improvement there. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that could look like. And I put this quote in here because I think it's pretty powerful, but this came from Marketo. The single largest opportunity for improving business performance today is tighter alignment between marketing and sales. So we talked about it a little bit already, but like, even though we focus on B2B organizations, for us, it's really, to Jazz's and Greg's point, it's B to H, which in our world is business to human. People want to do business and be communicated to from other people. So how do you implement empathy? How do you communicate that in everything that you do? And there are plenty of tools to do so. So through social media, through video, through content on your website, your entire digital footprint. You can showcase your company culture, your values, really, and more importantly, how you solve customers' needs. So next slide. Some current difficulties. If you look just about like what keeps things disjointed from a sales and marketing standpoint, and what keeps things misaligned from goals and strategies. And so sometimes it's nuanced by industry. Marketing might not be as prevalent, or enough resources might not be devoted towards marketing. It might be a more sales-led industry. Second one is lack of resources devoted to marketing. So, in order to really communicate and tell these stories and build trust, you really need to be, I would say, a marketing-led organization, or really a revenue team, which we'll talk about in the middle, which is sales and marketing-led organization. Lack of shared goals and strategies, and reporting structure and compensation. Sometimes they're two different departments, but sometimes they can seem like they work for two different companies because they're so disjointed. So like, these are some of the difficulties that feed into why organizations are not tightly aligned from a sales and marketing standpoint. But But our philosophy certainly, and when you look at the most successful companies out there and our most successful clients, they've got an approach towards sales and marketing that has evolved into one of really one revenue team or one growth team. So there might be separate departments, but once you start breaking down those walls, and if this is about lead acquisition, marketing owns certain stages of that funnel and sales owns other stages of that funnel, all of a sudden you start to become one revenue team, and that's a culture shift, and that makes a difference. So, from the companies that we've talked to, the ones we work with, and other leading organizations, it's really a culture of one revenue team versus sales and marketing working kind of independently. So next slide, please. So how do we get there? The first step is to find a common linchpin. So in business to business, typically that's a shared goal of revenue growth. So next slide. So getting started. What does that look like? The first thing you need to do is identify what that linchpin is. So this could be revenue growth, it could be new client acquisition, it could be client retention, conference attendance, anything that's important to your business to where marketing and sales can work together as one team in order to accomplish that goal. So number two is get in the room and talk about mutual strategies. Who owns what? And be very clear about that. Number three is put measurements in place so people know what they're accountable for. And then all of a sudden there's more of a team atmosphere. Talk to one another, communicate. Number four, this is both formally through shared meetings and structured meetings, and then informally, just through one-on-one conversations. And this might be even the layout of your office and where marketing sits and where sales sits. And then lastly, celebrate the wins. Blog posts that resonate, prospects that have come back to the site. Be open about that and celebrate the wins, because that becomes very contagious in a very, very positive way. So from a practical example standpoint, review your content. And so right now, I'm mainly just talking about from a sales perspective, but review your content, review your blogs, know what you have at your disposal that your marketing team, which is the other half of your revenue team, have created. And a lot of times you're creating this content together as well, because sales has great input and great insights to this. But I do this all the time. So if we're speaking at Sync Show, if we're speaking with someone that has a website redesign in their future, I'm absolutely sending our most appropriate web design blogs in follow-up emails. If we know someone is having an issue figuring out and building, a robust SEO strategy, our sales team is absolutely sending our guides or our blog content revolved around best practices in doing so, because it's really about being a resource. And I know everybody on this call knows that, but it's about being a resource and building trust, which goes back to Jazz's point. There's a quote out there that I'll just end this session with, this portion of the presentation, and it's, the art of salesmanship is the absence of salesmanship. And I think that's really interesting. I think if you really think about that, so it's, nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to buy. So don't sell, but be the guide. And how do you do that? You really can't do that without partnering with marketing and really forming kind of this revenue team kind of culture and philosophy. So all of that being said, just a quick summary for everybody, and then we'll look to see if we have any questions. If you have any questions, please submit them now. But just in quick summary, the three trends that we're seeing most important kind of leading into 2020, we've talked about trust and how trust is everything and how you go about building trust. Greg walked us through storytelling And even though this is nothing new and it's been around forever, but it's really the future of marketing and communications and how we interact with prospects and existing customers. And then lastly, sales and marketing alignment and customer service. Not to leave out customer service, but for the sake of time, we haven't really talked about that. But really into that one revenue team culture. So hopefully those are some tidbits to leave you with that that are of interest. And then we will look to see if we have any questions. Allison, do we have any questions? Or maybe we did such a good job we've answered them all. As you're thinking about this, we have one last question to ask you. In the previous slide, please, Allison. And it's thank you. And it's really, did you find this webinar useful? So just strongly agree, neither agree or disagree. This will help as we position our kind of content strategy and webinars going forward, and kind of the insights we try and share with you. So just take a minute and
yeah, and I would say that if anyone wants any clarity or on anything that was discussed today, reach out. We'd be happy to go into the details.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And we do have one question here. And Greg, I think this is going to be geared towards you, but it goes back to that playground analogy. And is the thought there, if I'm interpreting this correctly, is the thought with the playground analogy is somebody can enter your website from 100 different angles. And if that's the case, what's the first step we should take as far as making sure it's an easy entry for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it's basically, I would say attracting people, in sort of traditional ways, but if I'm actually I don't know if I'm actually necessarily understanding the question. The idea is that people are going to find you in all sorts of ways, and that you need to clearly and immediately on your homepage give them conversion points. And this is sort of also riffing on StoryBrand, which is that it says you need one clear point of conversion on your website. Maybe it's talk to an expert, whatever it is, you really need to drive that home. And then for the individuals who opt out of that, you need to have what StoryBrand calls transactional CTAs that are then driving them to maybe informational pieces. So it's basically like creating a choose your own adventure that's very easy to follow. And then so, some people are going to go right to what used to be referred to as bottom of the funnel type of conversion points. And then, other people are going to say, no, I'm going to, go and download this offer that's going to give me more information. Some people are going to only maybe view a video on your homepage. Maybe then they're going to bounce on over to, your social feed, and then maybe they're gonna bookmark that, and then they're going to come back in some other way.
Sure. Well, and I think you kind of touched on it as well, but it's a good point. Like, they're going to be entering through backlinks, and they're going to be entering through, your social presence, and just make sure that you're kind of optimized in each one of those pages where they land.
Right.
Great. One more question here, and Jazz, I think this might be geared towards you. So, what's the best way for a manufacturing company to build trust on their website?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. We work with a lot of manufacturing companies here, and I think that manufacturers are in a great space because there's so much room for certifications that they can show on their website. So I don't know exactly what form of manufacturing the person who asked this question is in, but every form of manufacturing has these certifications, and I think that they are great trust symbols across the board to be showing on your website. I'm thinking specifically of the ISO certifications. But then building even further off of that, reviews are so great as well. And reviews and testimonials go hand in hand. I know I touched on testimonials a little bit, but reviews are what people are putting out about your brand outside of your website. So Google reviews are the most prevalent. And there's always room to build campaigns around boosting the number of reviews you have on Google, or if there's an industry specific website that reviews are going to be really helpful for you to get there. That's another great way to do it that's very industry specific.
Great, great, good point, and great question, whoever asked that. So, well, good. Well, I hope and we hope that everybody found this useful with us kind of sharing these insights and what we're finding. Definitely come back to us with any questions. You know, as a digital marketing company for in the business to business space, we live and breathe this every day as we're working with our clients and putting content strategies together for lead generation. So we'd be happy to answer any questions or offer any assistance that we can. But that being said, Jess and Greg, I think we'll close this out and give everybody a little bit more time back in their day.
Great, that sounds good. Yeah, thank you everyone. Like Mike touched on, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
And
Yeah, thanks all. It was fun.
yeah, you and everybody, you'll be getting an email with a summary in these slides as well within the next day or two. So have a great rest of your day and thanks for attending. So long.